right, welcome everybody to a new episode of Papa Spice's Hot Takes with Hans and Harry. How's everybody doing today, Harry? How you doing?
Greg, I'm living spicy. No, I'm good. I'm just getting ready for more snow. Some more snow tomorrow. Super excited for that. I feel like every time we do this, there's snow. So get used to
Dude,
it, people.
it's never ending, and like my go-to is whenever it snows, I'm just gonna move to Texas. Well, that's not a good idea right
Oh
now.
no, not good at
Yeah.
all.
So yeah, hopefully we
Thoughts
survive the
thoughts out for the
snowstorm.
people in Texas.
Yeah. So hopefully we survive. Hopefully they're doing good and get power back up soon. And Hans, how about you? How you doing, man?
Doing good, doing good. Just I have nowhere else to put our snow on our tiny little street, so trying to figure that out. But other than that, getting all caught up on my WandaVision.
Nice. And speaking of, that's our topic for today, as I'm sure you guys saw when you downloaded or chose to watch the video. But we're here to talk about WandaVision, the season thus far, which will be episodes 1 through 6. This episode of ours will drop the same day episode 7 of WandaVision drops. So obviously we're not going to know what happens there. And maybe some of the things we'll talk about will be proven right. Maybe some will be invalidated. Maybe nothing will get answered. Who knows? But we're going to talk about it anyway because we got some hot takes and some observations and all the good stuff. This should go without saying, but because we're talking about episodes 1 through 6, which have already aired, heavy spoilers. Here, there be spoilers. So proceed with caution. If you guys haven't watched it, what are you doing? Go out, watch it, come back, and then listen to us.
Yep.
Okay, so how are we going to work this? Because we got 6 episodes. Well, we're going to kind of take a dive onto each episode. Some will be longer than others, but we kind of came up with some observations, and so we'll just go episode by episode and talk about what we saw or what we caught. So with that out of the way, let's jump in. Episode 1, filmed before a live studio audience.
Yeah, and I mean, what I think the show did best to start it off was kind of have an ode to all the previous kind of I guess sitcoms with families. Dick Van Dyke Show, Bewitched, I Love Lucy. A lot of that was in these first 2 episodes. I think it was also smart for them to drop the first 2 episodes instead of just going 1 and then waiting a week and then dropping 2. So that was pretty smart on their end. But love the touches, like when Vision walks through I guess it's a chair, but like kind of ottoman. And if you've ever seen the Dick Van Dyke Show, for all young heads out there, he usually trips in the opening of the Dick Van Dyke Show on that. And then Wanda's kind of bewitched traits, because I mean she is Scarlet. Nobody wanted to fill that in there. Scarlet Witch.
Sorry, I'll do it.
Scarlet
There
Witch.
we go.
Yeah.
There you go. So throwing it. Just going to keep lofting these softballs to you guys. So the audience at home,
Awesome.
They know what's up. So, and then just the I Love Lucy kind of dynamic with the husband and, the neighbors kind of crashing in and being like, what's going on? And, the confusion in the first episode with their, anniversary / dinner with the hearts element for that.
Yeah, so one of the things that I noticed was on that calendar, when they see the date August 23rd and it's got a heart on there. Now, eventually, at first, Wanda and Vision are kind of playing around where Vision doesn't seem to know what the date was, and Wanda seems to know, but she's not really letting on. But anyway, when it gets to Wanda and Agnes talking on the couch, she mentions it is an anniversary, or Agnes guesses it's an anniversary, and Wanda goes, yeah. So the question is, anniversary of what? Now, before we go with that conjecture and talk about what it could be, I did a little internet research to see if the date August 23rd had any significance, and while the date itself doesn't, the numbers 823, or more specifically 238, do, because apparently issue 238 of Avengers was a Monica Rambeau and Vision story. So I guess that was just one of the little Easter eggs, which there are many that dropped. And on that note, one thing that I should have mentioned before is I didn't watch many, like maybe one video of Easter eggs for each episode. I know there's a ton of those out there.
there's a lot of them.
explaining all the stuff. So if I reiterate something or any of the guys reiterate something that maybe has already been explained or dispelled or whatever, please let us know in the comments. But I'm just going off stuff I noticed, not necessarily stuff that has already been talked about.
Right.
Any thoughts on August 23rd? What that could be the anniversary of? Was Wanda playing coy, or does she really not know?
And with the date, a couple things went through my head when I first watched it. So my first initial thought was that August 23rd was most likely the date that Wanda kind of created this reality or this kind of world or hex, if we want to call it. But I kept having some more like possibilities. Like, was this the date that Thanos did the snap? I mean, they don't really announce dates in the MCU as big events that are happening. So I was thinking, was it kind of Wanda's memory just making it seem like she wasn't letting that date go? That was the date that she basically like became like kind of basically hurt with losing Vision. And we're going to talk about it a little bit with further episode is the blip. But I think that I think my initial reaction was that was the date that Vision had died. Then I thought it's possibly when she created this kind of world. I don't know. Now that we're up to season 6, I don't really know which one I'm leaning towards because of the direction the show's going, because it really could mean anything. But I think the way they're doing it to make it look like Wanda doesn't even know, and Vision, is the typical like TV husband where he doesn't remember, and they kind of play into that where, as we get further into the season of Vision, how much he knows and how much he doesn't know. So I thought they played that off really well. But those are my two initial thoughts. I don't think I'm right on either of them, but I mean, we'll see how it unfolds in the next 3 episodes.
Harry, what do you think?
Well, first I just wanted to say Chris, I think, said season 6. But I think he meant episode 6. So
I apologize.
Yes.
Just a correction there for it. No, you're all good.
Season 6, that's awesome. What happened in season 1 through 5?
Yeah, I mean, like you were saying it earlier, Greg. Like I didn't really watch any kind of videos to understand. So that 823 is interesting with that, and I think it's a little Easter egg for fans, to go ahead and dig up. I mean, that's a issue of comics that I've never read or know that story of. So that's why I rely on you, Papa, to tell us.
Nice.
But yeah, I mean, I think I agree with Chris. I think it's probably maybe kind of when this started, and then they kind of use that date as a reference for an Easter egg. But it's a funny little kind of just trope that would happen. That her and Vision get on the phone and talk to each other about the dinner party without actually talking about it, and then that causes the chaos when the hearts show up for it, and they have to kind of try to figure out how to get through that dinner. But then during the dinner, Wanda definitely has some trouble remembering details of the story, or she starts to get frustrated by it. So that was a really interesting scene to me when they jump into that.
Yeah, with that, at first, I thought that she just couldn't think of a lie to tell the hearts. But the more I see things go along, and I'll touch on this point again later a couple times, but Wanda having trouble remembering the details of their story, I think was pretty legit. Like I don't think that she was making it up that she doesn't remember. So when the hearts are asking her, oh, what's going on, special occasion, all that stuff, I don't think, or like when did you get into town and all of that, I don't think Wanda was being coy. I think she was being legit. No, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, yeah, I was going to say too, and this is, if you think back to when you watched episode 1, you don't have the episode 4, 5 when Rambeau shows up and is like, it's all Wanda. So I think it also plays to like what's going on here, is somebody being controlled, and what they're trying to remember with their story. But then that leads to the scene with I guess the breaking the wall and kind of leading to what's going on with Mr. Hart. Yeah,
I mean, the first time we really get a sense that things aren't everything they seem to be in this sitcom world is, you know, Mr. Hart starts choking on the food, and Mrs. Hart telling Wanda to stop it, like stop him from choking. You're in control. She doesn't say those words, but that's what she's intimating by saying stop it over and over. And it was a really creepy but well done scene. So I thought that was pretty interesting. Do you guys have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I can't think of the actress's name, but the mom from That 70 Show, she's great. I think she was a great addition to have in the scene. But yeah, you're right. It was very like eerie as it was like playing out, and she's saying stop it. And I feel like every time she kind of said stop it, it chills kind of went through where I'm like, all right, like, either something big's gonna happen, or like this is like it's leading up to like something like some kind of moment. And the way everyone played that scene is great. I think the whole dinner party was kind of funny. The fact that Wanda like was trying to find something to make, and she's like doing all the magic in the kitchen. Meanwhile, Agnes is back and forth, and it just the way the episode was leading up to that moment. And I think that's when the show, a lot of people that were watching it, it may have shifted gears for them where they're like, all right, like this is what we were looking for. Like, I think a lot of people thought it was just gonna be like a kind of a weird, like episodic comedy, like with the two Avengers, and that was the point where, and when I was watching, I was like, all right, this is kind of what I was looking for, where it was gonna kind of take a twist, and like I was less concerned about the date that at that point and wondering like what is happening at this point.
Mm-hmm. For sure.
Yeah, I mean, on first watch, I was like, I didn't even realize she was talking to Wanda. It was on the second watch where I was like, oh, she's asking Wanda to stop this. And I think it also shows the Wanda's powers. In a lot of the episodes, it has these little moments where Wanda isn't in control 100% or is controlling everything. And there's these moments of slip ups. So when Miss Hart is telling her, like, stop it, like a crazy person, you can kind of tell that because of the questions she was asked, she had to kind of break her concentration on probably what she was helping to control, presumably, or at least that's the way I received it for that.
Yeah, no, that's a really good point. So other than that, not too much to add on the first episode, other than when we go to the credits. Number one, there's a hexagon border, which kind of plays into the whole area. We find out that it's the whole area is called the Hex, and we'll touch on that more later. But as we see the credits for a lot of the show or a lot of the episodes, whether it's opening credits or closing credits, hexagons factor into most of those. So it's pretty interesting. And then of course the other thing was the change in the aspect ratio. Once we zoom out and we see somebody's actually watching the show, and it's like, whoa, what's going on here? The aspect ratio changes from the standard 4:3 for a television show to 16:9, which is, you know, what it is for movies. So as we get into other episodes and you go between the quote unquote real world and what's going on inside the Hex, you'll notice that, you know, the black bars come out for the real world, and the Hex is just like you're watching a TV show. Just a cool little touch. I mean, that's something that they didn't have to do, but I love that they did.
Yeah, I would say film nerds such as ourselves enjoy that. I asked my wife about it, and she said, I don't know what you're talking about. So I had to rewind it to show her and, you know, make her realize it. So
yeah, I remember watching
a cool little filmmaker touch, you know, director's touch, whatever, you know, producer's touch, you know, with that.
Yeah, the first time I watched it, I wasn't sure if something was like wrong with my screen, and and I had to like go back for a second. I'm like, all right, no, that was actually intentional.
Yeah. Before we move on to season 2, Harry, you mentioned your
season 2, guys.
Season
what
2,
are we
episode
doing?
2, episode 2.
It's in it now. I can't wait till we
that
do
is
it the whole
twice
episode.
for those paying attention.
What is wrong with you?
Before we go on to episode 2, Harry, you mentioned your wife is watching it. How's everybody's significant others enjoying the show? Do they find it appealing at all?
I would say definitely Jill enjoys it more than I do, but I think she enjoyed the first 2-3 episodes. We're actually doing a binge of Modern Family. So, and if you watch Modern Family, it really plays on the feels, especially almost with every episode. And the wife really enjoys that and digs it. But I mean, I think she enjoys it a little bit more. I think she enjoys more of the Vision and Wanda, you know, when they're together, and especially the earlier episodes, than she does when the kind of, you know, I guess the Marvel Cinematic Universe gets poured in. But she's been enjoying it a lot so far. She's very excited for the rest.
Good. Chris, how about you?
Catherine couldn't care less. I don't remember. It was either 5 or 6, and I believe it was the 5th episode. And I was trying to explain to her what was happening, and that conversation was over in less than 10 seconds.
No.
She just was kind of brushed it off and says, "Okay."
Now, is that because she's just not enjoying the show, or she's not a big Marvel fan?
She's probably seen, out of all the 23 Marvel movies, 22. She's probably seen 3 or 4. So
Okay.
I don't think I tried to explain to her the whole Vision Wanda relationship, and that it was Mary-Kate and Ashley's younger sister. I tried to throw that in there for a little bit of a taste, but no, it didn't work.
She's a big Olsen twins supporter.
Yes. So but no, we haven't watched it together. I think that oh no, she questions when and we'll talk about this later. Actually, I'll bring it up. At one point where she did watch it and was like, "Yep, you don't say anymore. We're done." So I think
not a fan of WandaVision, not a fan of True Lies.
She's watched it in the same room as me, and I think like maybe once she asks a question, and then I'll start explaining it, and that's it. So
you lost her.
Once we get into a further episode, I can tell you the exact point when she was like, "All right, don't even try."
Yikes. My wife Janet and I watch it. We make it appointment TV every Friday morning when the baby's sleeping. So she really enjoys it also. I think some of the things with her not being a huge comic fan might go over her head. So I'm there to explain it. But unlike Catherine, she doesn't really tune out. She just kind of like, oh, okay. So yeah, we're enjoying it too. But I was just curious to get the other perspective and see what everybody was thinking.
Yeah. I'm gonna try again. But we'll see what happens.
Keep plugging away, buddy. Let us know how it goes. Okay,
maybe
so
the next show.
Moving on to episode 2. Don't touch that dial. So again, we have the hexagons and the openings. But beyond that,
in the first, didn't mean to cut you off, but in the first kind of opening with the show, it has more of a Bewitched theme, but I mean, the first 2 episodes kind of tie in a little bit with there, but this one kind of leans really hard into the Bewitched theme, which I think started in the 60s and, go 50s, 60s, and as we go on. Monica Rambeau, this is her first kind of in the animation opening in being implemented into the show, into the 1960s for this. So I'm pretty sure we see her obviously in the episode. And there's, it's not really an Easter egg, but like you notice when they show it, when they finally reveal everything, I think in episode 5, when they show when Rambeau gets in, there's a scene that they don't show us, but they do show it to the characters in the show, if I'm explaining that well enough. But yeah, this is our first kind of indication that she's in.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, interesting to see a little introduction of her there. Going back to the hexagon thing, the magic cabinet that they have, where Vision is practicing
more hexagons.
For the talent show. Yeah, exactly. We got the Infinity Stone, which is a hexagon, so that could be another reason for this particular shape, the specific shape. First time we really get a hint that Agnes is kind of aware somewhat of what's going on is her line to Wanda. Look, it's the star of the show. I thought that was pretty interesting. And, I didn't catch that the first time around, but the second watch through I saw. Did you guys happen to catch that as well? Or?
Yeah, I the first time I always thought like something like was off about Agnes in terms of like her character, and I always thought that she was maybe basically like the viewer in the show, like us in the show, and like kind of breaking that fourth wall like unintentionally. But I definitely at that point where like from the first episode to that point, I'm like I think right there was like, all right, like, you got to keep a close eye on her because she knows a little more than what she's letting on.
Mhm.
And you know, as she goes through the show, she's always kind of has that, you know, as it gets further along, you're like, all right, what is she like? Does she know something, or is she actually like in this, like, was she created by Wanda? But you know, I will touch on that more later. I have some theories on Agnes, but
Mhm.
I think that was the first point where you're like, all right, she definitely is a little more knowledgeable than other people in the town are leading on.
Mhm.
Yeah, I mean it's very very early on that we get you know, Agnes in season 2, or I said
Oh,
season 2.
yes.
No, I
There it
did
is.
it.
The
No.
trifecta. We got the hat trick, baby.
Oh no.
Oh, man.
Dang. Episode 2. But yeah, I mean obviously there's something weird going on with her in there. And then the other part where Rambo shows up is when her and Agnes head over to the, what do they call it? Like the committee, you know, or whatever. I forget the
Yeah.
exact title of it, but they head
Yeah, it
over
was a committee
there,
for the
and
little festival.
yeah, and we get to meet Dottie, and yeah, there's some more things there with that.
Yeah, I found the line that Dottie had, the devil's in the details, Bev. And then Agnes says, that's not the only place he is. I thought that little exchange was very interesting, and that'll tie into something I want to talk about a little later. But the
Dun dun
first hint that,
dun.
again, yeah, something is amiss, and it's like, who could this devil be that Agnes is referencing? Um,
Yeah.
so pretty interesting. And then Rambo had a line, right?
Yeah, Rambo. This is another one where I was talking about with the first episode, when the Hearts are at dinner. Rambo says, "I don't know what I'm doing here," and then Wanda introduces herself, and this is where kind of that breaking of the wall happens again, where the camera pans to, you know, Rambo, who we don't know obviously is Rambo at this moment, but pans to her. Who did she? I forget what she introduced herself as, but this, she pans to her and she kind of does this like aha moment, and she realizes that, oh, I'm talking to Wanda, you know, an Avenger. What's going on? Like, and I think that's when she kind of gets, you know, herself back a little bit to, you know, being Monica Rambeau, the agent of Sword.
Mm-hmm. Instead of Geraldine.
Geraldine,
That's
thank you.
it.
I
Yes,
Yes.
forgot the
that was the
character's name
character.
in the show. So many layers. You have the character's name in this fake show, WandaVision. You have the character's name in this show, WandaVision, and then the actress's name, and so many layers.
Yeah, it's a lot to keep track of. Um, just a little note here, but and again, this was something that I didn't really pick up on until the second viewing through. But when Vision's at the neighborhood watch meeting, you know, they give him some gum, which he accidentally swallows, and it gums up the works.
Hilarity ensued.
Yeah, but the gum that they offered him, Big Red. Now, this will again play into something that I want to talk about later, but I find it very intriguing that out of all the gums, they chose that one. Now, it could be alluding to the fact that Wanda is known as the Scarlet Witch, Big Red, Scarlet,
Possibly.
but I think it's going to stand for something else. So I don't know. We'll see.
I didn't know. Maybe they're just Andy Reid fans.
Yeah, that could be too. Oh man, don't bring up the Chiefs. You just brought the pain
Oh
and the grief
no.
back.
Oh no.
I
Poor
want
Greg. I'm
to.
sorry.
I'm
Yeah.
gonna take over. I'm gonna take over Kansas City, and I'm gonna transform that into a town where everybody thinks we won the Super Bowl.
Yeah. Just make your own little reality.
Yes.
Greg
No,
Vision.
I didn't pick up on
Yeah.
the Big Red. I didn't pick up on the Big Red, but
Mm.
I just, on a side note, I thought that whole scene was just like, is hilarious because, you know, it gums up his gears and he's basically acting drunk the whole time. I thought it was really played out, and it really, Paul Bettany is such a great actor that
They both are, yeah.
I know, and yeah, and I think just the way he like plays that out, it's so like, it's interesting to see his character from where he like kind of was in Iron Man 1, where he was just like a voiceover, and he basically is at the point where all he had to do was voiceover. Now he's at the point where he has like full on, like, he's the star of the show,
Yeah.
and he's always been a great actor. Like, not taking anything away from his past, but I just think I can't imagine. This is where I've imagined other people like recast it in other, like, as other roles. Like, would they do better? I can't imagine him like anyone else playing Vision at this point other than him. He's just he's so like great how he plays the character off.
Yeah.
It's wild too, because if you he did an interview, I forget when it was, had to be a couple of years ago, but he said he thought he was done with Hollywood. Like he thought he was out and he wasn't going to get cast in any more things, just because I don't know, he didn't have confidence in his career. And then he got cast as Jarvis, and then when they decided to make the Vision, and they gave him a call, he was like, "Oh, they're calling to tell me I'm out of the franchise. Like, that's it." And instead, they offered him the role of Jarvis incarnate as Vision. And then again, when it was time to get the call for WandaVision, he just assumed that they were saying, "Hey, you're definitely done with the series. Vision died in Endgame. Spoiler alert, whatever." But no, instead it was, "Hey, you're going to get your own 9-episode show, and it's going to be premiering on Disney Plus." So this guy, he definitely needs to have more confidence, because for sure he knocks it out of the park, as does Elizabeth Olsen, like Harry mentioned, and everybody for that matter. But it's just funny to see a guy like that.
What was the movie he made? I remember it came out on IMAX. It was like Preacher or something.
Oh, Legion?
Yeah, Legion, I think
was it Legion or
I don't
Priest?
remember
or Priest. He was in both. It's the same thing.
Yeah, it was not good. I remember our buddy. I think I saw it with our buddy Tim, and you know how he loves those type of movies.
Dude,
so, under the bus.
Yes, but the point of the matter is, don't give up on your dreams, kids, because one day you could be the Vision.
And try for it.
We all have our Priest.
Yeah, ain't that the truth? So Wanda had an interesting line to Dottie. Anybody want to take that?
I assure you, I don't mean any harm.
So yeah, I mean, I'm guessing, it's a double entendre there, where she's just saying, "Hey, look, I know I'm in control, but I don't think, I'm not here to hurt anybody."
Yeah. I mean, I think this is another one where it kind of breaks that wall where, that's also, I think, when the radio kind of comes into play shortly after, or right around that scene, and Dottie ends up bleeding. So I think it's another part where I don't think she has 100% control there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I agree. I think it maybe Dottie was kind of starting to feel like she was like thinking on her own, I guess, in that point where she was coming out of like kind of whatever spell she was in, and that was Wanda's way of saying, like, "I mean you no harm," to kind of get control back over her. As things kind of start to fan out, you kind of realize that, like we had mentioned before, someone had said, it's all Wanda. And then it makes you look back, like what did these people know? Like, how much control did she have on them? So
yeah.
Mm-hmm. So the next note I have on here is Dottie's blood is red, which to the average person might seem duh, but is this we know that color's coming in the next episode. Is this kind of a foreshadowing of that, or is there some dark secret foreboding thing, why her blood would show up red when everything else is in black and white? What do you guys think?
Go ahead. Go.
No,
go ahead.
Okay.
No.
All right. I think the red blood is, again, also something that she didn't know she would have to control. I'm sure part of the reason why, it's in black and white is part of Wanda controlling it. So I think that's right after the radio cuts in, and Jimmy Woo, he's trying to get Wanda's attention, and it kind of breaks again that wall of Wanda having control, and Dottie, I think it's a cup or a glass that's in her hand, ends up breaking, cutting her, something that wasn't planned to be in for the show. And as we'll see in episode 4, they kind of cut away from that part, so it's not seen by the audience per se for that.
Hans, what were you gonna say?
That's exactly what he was going to say.
Yeah, you got it, Ben. Yeah. Next topic. No, I think with the red too, like it's interesting, like how it kind of like plays out. I think like Harry's right. Like it's her, like you realize how, like kind of like early the stage is, I guess, in terms of it seems like it goes from like the 50s to the 60s. It could be like a 10-year period, and we eventually learn that it's a very short amount of time. So yeah, that could be her just trying to see everything, like how how much she can control, and how she's losing, if she has control, how she's losing it. Now we still don't really understand why they're doing, like, why this is being an episodic TV show. So I think that also plays in a point of going from the black and white to the color. Like, is she making it to seem like a black and white TV show? Is someone else, like, whoever's like ultimately controlling?
Yeah.
So I think that could be another thing too. If she sees the red and she's like, oh, like, shoot, like, this is either something I'm supposed to be controlling, or whatever's happening isn't happening the way it should.
Okay. And so moving on to the end of the episode, we have that festival, or talent show, I don't know, whatever you want to call it, where Vision and Wanda perform as illusion and glamour. But after they finish, or is it before? I don't remember for sure, but there's almost like a cult-like chant that, this is for the children.
Yeah,
for the children.
That is very. That's another one of those, like, the stop it moment where it's very, like, eerie, and I kind of watch. I'm like, oh, this is getting really weird now.
Which also intriguing, because up to this point we haven't seen any children in WandaVision, so that's kind of interesting. But I think the purpose of that for the children is kind of taking it up to the meta level, where it's like all of this, at least in my eyes, I think Wanda is doing part of this, or doing this because she wants kids. She wants that happy life with Vision. She wants kids, and I think all of this is a setup, a preamble, if you will, to get to her and Vision having kids. So I think that's where that kind of comes in, and it's foreshadowing that. I don't know. What do you guys think? Could it be anything else? Is it just a creepy thing they threw in?
When you're watching this for the first time, you say for the children, and I don't even think I noticed there were no children. I think it just, up until a later episode, you're like, up until, Vision calls it out, you're like, oh, like, you're right. And then I did rewatch this episode for a second time, and I'm like, okay, now it's like, it still doesn't make sense why they're saying for the children, especially, but it, as things kind of lead up to the fact that, is it this episode where we find out Wanda is pregnant, or is that the next episode?
I believe it's the end of this, right?
It's the end of this one where she, okay. When everything turns to color. So, and then I think it's eventually leading up to the fact that she's going to be having the children. So, yeah, I agree with that.
I think two scenes that really stand out for me with Elizabeth Olsen. One of them is the end of this episode where she finds out she's pregnant. She's like, Vision, is this really happening? Like, oh man, I thought she did such an awesome job with that.
Right.
Excuse me. The other episode is, or the other scene is when she actually gives birth, and she's just like, oh, he's perfect. I thought, like the way she delivered that line just kind of gives me chills. But yeah, I think she did a tremendous job with that. So
yeah.
All right, cool. So that's episode 2 down. Moving on to episode 3, now in color. We getting any type of vibes from this episode?
Listen, heavy Brady Bunch vibes. I mean, obviously there's not, of a story of a man named Brady, and he wasn't bringing up 3 very lovely boys. All right, but they have a lot of the imagery and more of those hexagonal shapes show up in the opening credits with it. But yeah, heavy 70s vibes, Brady Bunch vibes for sure.
I thought it was interesting too, because as we get into the episode, Vision's talking about how he wants to name the son Billy, assuming they're having a son, based off of William Shakespeare. And then he has a quote, "All the world's a stage. The men and women are merely players." So, I mean, there's not too much going on with that other than just describing the entire show.
Yeah.
But it's one of those where, again, you think he's just spouting off some random quote, and then you go back on the rewatch, and it's like, oh, that's cool.
Yeah, William,
Yeah.
Billy,
Mhm.
connection.
Yeah, no, you're right. You picked that up, and you're like, all right, like we get it. Like now does Vision now is this at the point where Vision still knows is starting to catch on, and he's kind of spouting that off? But I think honestly at that point he's still like doesn't really absolutely he believes this is all real,
Yeah.
and it's just like likes to spout off some cool quotes once in a while.
Don't we all from time to
Yeah.
time?
Yeah.
You miss 100% of the shots you don't take. Abraham Lincoln.
Yeah.
Exactly.
um, so I have a note on here about the stork and how there is scarlet smoke. For me, what I think about the stork is that, and the smoke, some people say that they think this is foreshadowing a certain character, which I'll talk about later. I don't think it is. I think other things might be, but I think this is kind of like a red herring. I think it's just, it could be one of two things. Either it's a red herring to throw us off, or it's Scarlet for Scarlet Witch. Again, kind of like the big red gum. It could be one or two of those things. Not sure which. What do you guys think about it? Was it just happenstance that it was red smoke? Does it represent anything?
My first thought was and I believe me and you were probably on the same page with where it could potentially be like a certain character coming.
Mm-hmm.
Now I'm kind of gonna stick with that only because I don't think she was able to control the stork.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that was kind of a little bit. Now it could be a red herring. It could be just something to say like, all right, well, this is just that a lot's going on. Like, is this just something to throw kind of like Wanda can't control everything at once. So that could also be something as well. So
and to be fair too, her powers were particularly wonky when she was pregnant.
right.
Like it started raining inside and all,
The painting was spinning and
yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
So and like it could be, and there's a lot of goofy stuff going on in this town. So if you see a stork run through your living room, like that's not necessarily. It could just be symbolism that the fact that she's having her babies. But I am leaning a little bit towards that character that I'm pretty sure me and you are probably on the same page for. But Harry, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, this is definitely out of my realm of knowledge. When I watched it, I just thought, oh, she's trying to use her powers, to turn it off, or to make the stork go away, not turn it off. But it was really interesting because I also, like, when you're watching that scene, Rambo's character Geraldine, she doesn't really, like, it's almost obvious that there's a stork there. Like, it almost seems like she's kind of, because of that whole situation and the baby coming, she kind of is already has broken character and is kind of trying to, just get to find out more about her. But
do you
yeah,
think Geraldine is like willfully ignoring the stork?
I think
like she's
so,
aware
yeah.
that it's there, but she's not.
I think so. At least with that in that scene. So, but yeah, because I think, I don't know, I feel like in the last episode, Geraldine kind of has more realization, or Rambo has more realization of her person, which, kind of leads to the interaction that they end up having right towards the end of this episode.
Mm-hmm.
And
you guys want to talk about that?
Yeah, I mean, Wanda, I didn't realize it at first because, again, not really hip to everything all the time, but you watch it a second time and you see that Scarlet Witch, she sees the sword necklace, and especially after she gets the questions and it's like, who are you, what are you doing here, with all that stuff. So and our first maybe it's not the first mention, because at the end of every episode I feel like they're really pumping up Age of Ultron. I guess it didn't get enough views, and they're like, hey, you watch this episode, check out Ultron.
Quick note about that. I don't know if this happens for you guys, but after every single episode of WandaVision, when Disney Plus suggests what to watch next, it's always Age of Ultron.
Anything?
Yeah.
No, at the end of every episode of WandaVision.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
That's
no,
what
that's true.
happens to me.
I thought that was a joke. Someone put that on Twitter, and I thought that was like just a joke. But then I that was something I did notice too. I'm like, all right, like,
They're pumping it hard, baby.
yeah,
Well, it's funny because I would imagine if you're watching WandaVision, you've seen Age of Ultron.
Right. I
It's
mean,
like,
that's the introduction of the
yeah.
character.
But
Yeah.
maybe we need to go back and watch it to maybe find out if there's any clues we might be missing.
Interesting.
Any clues?
And then we have a little interaction with Agnes and Herb or Herb. You know.
Yeah. So yeah, Vision's kind of, he's obviously out of the scene, so he doesn't know what's actually happening to Monica's character at this time. But he's talking to Agnes and Herb, and they're talking about, hey, Geraldine, she doesn't really fit here. She doesn't live here, no home, all this stuff. And Herb tries to start, I guess, maybe even again, this is part of that control issue where I don't think at that moment in time, Wanda has complete control. Mm-hmm. And she's dealing with, Monica Rambeau in this situation. So Herb and Agnes are, kind of, I would say, more aware of themselves. And I think Herb tries to say it, but Agnes stops. And this is another moment where it's like, what is Agnes up to? And who is Agnes? And, what is she, why didn't she just say this to Vision? And also, like we talked about too, this is more where Vision's becoming more aware, learning more. It's almost like the first episode is minute 1 for Vision, and he's kind of growing and learning and becoming more aware of like not everything is as it seems with it. So that was an interesting, another little tidbit to kind of get the casual viewers in with, hey, what's going on here.
Chris, any thoughts about this conversation?
Yes. I really wanted to know whatever word that. And I'm trying to think, and I didn't rewatch this at the time. Was Agnes about to say they don't know that we're all, and then one of them cut the other one off, and I really want to know what if she was going to say a couple, like it was going to be one word, like if she was going to say we're all under Wanda's control. There's another word that I want to say, but I'm not going to, only because I don't really want to get my hopes up. But with the introduction of another character later in the show, all right, then fine. I'll just flat out say it. As we see a little more, and with Disney buying other properties, and we kind of eventually get the reveal for the next episode. I was hoping the word was going to be mutant, but the more as it went along, I don't think that's the case. I think that she was probably going to end up saying something like we're all like being controlled by Wanda, or we're all but I got my hopes up really quick, and then logically thought about it of where the show's going. But I'm sure we'll touch on that a little more as things kind of start developing through the next few episodes. So
this conversation with Agnes and Herb and Vision is specifically Agnes's role in it. It's very perplexing to me because she seems to be someone that's good, and she's kind of ratting out Geraldine like she knows Geraldine's an outsider. So is she ratting out Geraldine because she thinks Geraldine is controlling Wanda, or what? Because otherwise, the next logical thought would be Agnes knows she's an outsider. Maybe the outsider is here for help. So I mean, clearly Agnes has never heard snitches get stitches. But
not in her vocabulary.
Yeah, but I mean, I don't know why she would kind of make those remarks to Vision and cast some suspicion on Geraldine unnecessarily. So it's a bit of a conundrum there, but I'm sure we'll get the reveal on who Agnes is working for, or what she's doing as we go along. So that's it for episode 3. Next up, we have episode 4. We interrupt this program, and for a lot of people, this episode was the game changer.
Yeah, this is where I see it as we had discussed before, where I kind of saw episodes 1 through 3 as a prologue, like the longest prologue in terms of like a TV show, and I think this is where the show starts to go in the direction that is like kind of like like fully intentional, like from here on out, is where we're going to get a lot of the background of the story that's going on. I think it was like the first three were great setups, and they asked a lot of questions, and then like right off the bat, like an episode, like they're not going to make you wait till season 9 for some of the reveals. They're just flat out going to say like this episode, like, yeah, this is how Monica got in. Like Monica got in fairly quick. Like it wasn't like how much, like you find out that this whole thing's been going on for only a few days. Like there's a lot of stuff that you kind of start to understand about what's really happening in Westview without knowing what's happening in Westview.
Before we get into the details for this episode, because I'm on the internet a lot checking out, different people's theories and opinions and stuff like that, and it seemed like there was a minority, but a vocal minority, that really didn't like the first 3 episodes, and then this one is what turned them on. Me personally, I love the first 3 episodes, and it's kind of like that Flanders meme where it's like, if you didn't like me at this, then you don't deserve me at this. I kind of feel that way with this show, because those first 3 episodes were great, and I'm happy that it evolves into what it does. But if it had just stayed that way with the sitcom thing, I'd be all for that also. So I don't know, Harry, what do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, I think you bring up a good point, Greg. I think a lot of people enjoy television that doesn't ask as many questions and just has answers. They want to see the criminal caught at the end of the episode. They want to know, that this guy, is betraying this person, leading into this episode. So I think when TV shows or new content or new episodic stuff comes out, when it's asking more questions than answers, it throws a lot of people off. Like I know, my wife really enjoyed this episode a lot because it answers a lot of the questions of, hey, what is this helicopter that's in color here? Hey, what is going on with, Geraldine, and who was she? So this does a lot of the beekeeper as well at the end of the, I think, second episode. And I think a lot of people looked at it like, oh, this is just a weird old comedy, that has some weird quirks about these 2 characters that I know, but this is where the Marvel part of it steps in and takes over. So, but yeah, I think that's just a lot of people's opinions. And this was also the episode that you guys, where it really felt like the internet kind of, jumped in with 2 feet with everyone like, dude, this was incredible. And I didn't really feel that way with it. I thought it was good, but it was definitely one where it was like, if you're not watching this show now, you need to be, because this is going to be what people are talking about every Friday.
Right.
Yeah, that's, and it's a lot of that, like, and you see this with a lot of, I've seen it with just superhero movies in terms of like ones that aren't filled with action or, and I'll like take, for example, like I know a lot of people who don't really enjoy The Watchmen because they find it like kind of boring, and
they would be wrong.
And there's not a lot of action, I don't think, in the movie for a superhero movie, I guess, as you want to put. So a lot of people are like, oh, it's not action. Like there's no, like, I'm not on that page with that. And I think a lot of people, when they see like a Marvel like or an MCU product, they want that. Like I'm sure like they probably thought there was going to be like a big battle at the end of, in like an I Love Lucy kind of setting. Like
yeah.
And you're not going to get that. And you don't get that for the first 3 episodes. Like I don't think you see anything like any kind of like hostile action taken until Wanda shoots out Monica from the hex. So I think that's why a lot of people did not like it. But, this is where everything kind of, like, as Harry said, it's a lot of that I want it now kind of mentality. And this is the part where you kind of start moving forward, where you're like, all right, this is it. Like, this is a Marvel kind of property.
Jumping into that, I want it now type thing. How do you guys feel about this show being released weekly, similar to The Mandalorian? Are you guys happy with that, or do you want to binge it all at once?
I mean,
go ahead.
I enjoy this more. I mean, especially for 3 guys who, like to talk about a podcast about content. I think it makes it easier for us to have that dialogue with people, as it's
Big
going
facts.
on, as opposed to, it all dropping at once. But I guess you're talking about like, as well as like, the way TV used to be and the way it is, Netflix is kind of monetized. Like, hey, here's everything at once. Enjoy. I would say I prefer it to be more episodic with it. I don't mind when it's like, hey, here's 2 episodes dropped at once, or here's 3 dropped at once, and then you'll have to wait. But I do enjoy the fact that you get to digest, and I think it definitely works a lot better with shows like this, where there's so many Easter eggs. There's 23 other movies that you can reference or kind of look back at to try and see, oh, are they referencing this, or comic book lore, where are they referencing this? But even with shows that aren't that, I enjoy kind of being left on the edge of my seat, like something like Game of Thrones. Even though it didn't, end as well as they did when they went off book, there was that, like, what's going to happen next week? Hey, let's make our predictions. We don't know, and stuff like that. So I really enjoy having that dialogue, either, obviously with you guys or with other people, as opposed to just being like, hey, have you seen, the Queen's Gambit? And it's like, oh, I'm on episode 1. It's like, oh, well, I finished it. And it's like,
Yeah.
what will you do when you finish it? We'll talk about it then.
Yeah. Hans, how about you, buddy?
I'm the same. I would prefer episodic on this type of show. Now, there are certain shows, and I'll just gonna pull one for an example out of in quarantine. The wife and I both binged as much as we could. Tiger King, which that show is the kind of show where you're like, it gives you so much per episode where you're like, do we watch another one? Like, this is how things on, like, I need to know what happens next.
Right.
Now, and I think on a show like Marvel or like a Marvel show or like Mandalorian, I think it's better to kind of watch it and then have, like, be able to digest it a week, and not. I think a lot of, like, binging takes away a lot from that, where, I actually was able to watch a couple episodes for WandaVision more than once before the next one, and kind of either get caught up and look at something I missed. When you're binging something like 8 or 9 episodes, it's basically, you're just like you don't give yourself enough time to process it. And I think for a show like this, I'm more leaning towards, as much as I want the next episode, like, now. Like, I would love to have it. Yeah. I would love to have it like love to have one like every day. But I think I appreciate it more the way they're doing it, of how Disney's handling their product.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, call me old school, or, call me gullible, because this gets Disney to ensure that I have Disney Plus for at least 2 months or whatever it is. But I prefer this way to watch it as well. I think, it gives you that sense of anticipation, like, oh man, I get to wait a whole week and watch this, and it gives you something to look forward to throughout your week. It's like I said, we make it appointment television in our household, so it's definitely a Friday thing that we look forward to. But also, like you mentioned, Hans, it gives you time to really ruminate and digest everything, rather than just being information overload and missing out on so much stuff. So I'm happy that they do the show in the weekly format. I hope Cap and Falcon and Winter Soldier is going to be the same, and all the Marvel shows, Mandalorian, all the Star Wars shows. I hope they all keep them episodic instead of just, here you go, feast your eyes, fat little piggies. binge.
Yeah.
All right, so let's dive into this episode. We diverged a bit here.
We had to interrupt this program to discuss all that.
There is one huge question on everyone's minds.
Listen, if you listen to our Marvel podcast and we discussed our Marvel movies, there was one of us here. It's Chris. I'm going to spoil. Who didn't see one of the Marvel movies, and then it's so funny that we get here, and what movie is referenced in this television show? Chris, do you know?
It's correct me if I'm wrong, but it's Age of Ultron.
No, it's not.
Well, you're not wrong, so I can't correct you there. But there's another movie.
Yes, I have not seen Captain Marvel from the
ladies
past
and
2
gentlemen,
weeks of whenever it was last time. I have not seen Captain Marvel. It was on TV last week, and I still didn't watch it. So
it was on Disney Plus, which you go onto every week to watch the episode of WandaVision, and you didn't watch it.
Listen, humble brag. Our last episode, we talk about 15 different directors. Between us dropping that last episode and now, I watched about 5 movies that you guys had on your list that I have not seen before. But you could not take the time to watch Captain Marvel, which you have access to, which is hugely referenced. So
how about this? Before our next
shame.
before our next podcast, our next show,
This is
I will
recorded, by the way.
make an attempt.
Make an
to-
attempt. He's
to-
not even
Uh-oh,
saying he's
watch
gonna watch
Captain
it.
Marvel.
All
Oh
right.
my
We should just do
God.
a segment every week and just like has Chris watch Captain Marvel. No,
No. End segment.
Uh,
All right. Well, that's
I-
disappointing
I-
to hear, but
by the next
very
show,
disappointing.
I will have watched Captain Marvel. And,
Okay.
and you have my word.
I'm not going to believe anything he's saying, Greg. I don't know about you.
I'm on Wikipedia reading about it right now.
Well, one of the most important things, if you do watch Captain Marvel, is right in the beginning of this episode, and this is why, if you're not doing this, you need to be doing this, folks. Subtitles are so important.
Yes.
They allow you to hear things. Listen, if you saw Tenet, rewatch it with subtitles. I'm sure it'll help. But for this show, it starts off, and you see that Captain Marvel is talking to a young Monica Rambeau, referenced in a movie that Chris didn't see. And this is why subtitles are important, because it gives you that interaction and shows you which character is talking and what they are saying. And what's great about, difference of watching a Marvel movie at the theater as opposed to watching on TV, you can pause and read it if it's going too fast for you. But yeah, there's the Captain Marvel reference right there at the beginning for that.
Much to my wife's chagrin, I watched everything with subtitles and captions.
It'll
it's
help.
just
Listen. It'll only help when you get older and you can't hear as well. You'll already be used to it. You'll already be ready for subtitles because they're there.
exactly.
Yeah. All right, and as the one person who hasn't seen Captain Marvel, I pretty much understood most references that was being made. So I'd appreciate it if you two boys would get off my back.
Listen, as someone who doesn't read comics or isn't in the Marvel lore, when I wouldn't have known anything if I didn't see Captain Marvel. I'd been like, I don't know who Rambeau is. I don't know who this woman on this picture is as they're going through this door. I don't know what her relation is to her. But yeah, that's the way I would feel about it.
Yeah. Now I'm gonna throw out my quick hot take while we're talking about the beginning. It's a hot take on myself.
Okay.
I think that I loved the first couple minutes of this episode of how seeing people come back from the snap, where basically they were just being put together by all their ashes or whatever kind of happened before. I find that to be the only other time we saw that happen before was during Far From Home, during like the school press conference when all
Top
the people
5 Marvel
show
movie,
up.
right?
Yes.
Yeah.
This show did it better than Far From Home, so I'm just gonna throw
100%,
that in
yeah.
there. Yeah, but I love the chaos of just seeing everything going on like as they're coming back. I thought the way that was filmed and it's to see like that like firsthand experience of people like kind of what they would be experiencing in that kind of situation.
Yeah, I mean, I know, Far From Home did it for comedic purposes. Like,
Right.
they showed it with the intent of kind of making light of it. But I have a feeling, if we were to go through this is what it would be like. And it was very cool to see her being reassembled from the ash. And then all of a sudden there's just chaos everywhere. And it's like, what's going on? Who are you? These people just appeared out of nowhere. You've been missing for 5 years. Like all that stuff, all these thoughts come to mind. And, I thought it was really well done, especially the time frame that they were given to show this.
Yeah, and I think this is like the first time you get firsthand experience other than like Spider-Man saying in Endgame, like kind of what happened where like in this like he's talking to Iron Man when they first like kind of get back together in the middle of the fight where he's like kind of saying he's like, oh, and then Doctor Strange came, blah blah blah. And you don't necessarily see if like they knew what happened. And this is I think the first time where Monica's like, I fell asleep. It couldn't have been more than 20 minutes. Like in their mind, they were just like kind of sleeping. So I thought that was like kind of a little cool touch on it because you really like that's the first time that anyone kind of shares exactly how much time they thought went by. So
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the only thing I was going to say about it is these are the type of questions that people ask, that fans ask, like, hey, what happened to the people, from the snap, or what happened when they got put back in, or, what's going to happen next with, the folks from the snap. And there's a line that Director Haywood says when him and Monica Rambeau get together. He says, you're back 3 weeks after the snap. So, the end of Endgame, 3 weeks after, we're pretty much, dealing with, Wanda's story. So that's another just hint of timeline, and people trying to connect the dots on things like this. And for us to, have a reference point on, okay, how long is this taking place after Endgame? And when he says that, and then, the 9 days, I think he says when Wanda, takes Vision's body, you're kind of trying to piece it all together. And it's like, hey, we're not that far from when, Thanos was again, spoiler alert, destroyed.
Yeah. Yeah, it seems
with it.
like a lot goes down in just a
Right
very
after.
short time span.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
How great are Monica Rambeau, Jimmy Woo, and Darcy Lewis? I mean, not just the characters, but the actresses and actor who play them also. I mean, I cannot get enough of these guys.
I mean, it just goes to show to me, like, how smart, like we talked a little bit about it earlier with Paul Bettany, like how smart Marvel is in just getting good actors, good characters to just build with or reutilize. Jimmy Woo when he was in, Ant-Man, Darcy Lewis from the Thor movies, it just shows how smart they are and how far they're thinking ahead compared to, what we end up doing. And it's like, oh, maybe they'll do this. And it's like, oh, we'll just reuse this character who had a small scene, who works for the FBI, back into, the show.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, Jimmy Woo, I love the callback to the card trick. I thought that was pretty funny. So I like
went
that
crazy with that.
I like that there's continuity, that they don't just say, oh yeah, here's this character, but they actually connect little points from some of the other stuff. But yeah, I mean, I just think it's fabulous. And Randall Park, I mean, I can't get enough of that dude. Shout out to him.
More Randall Park. More Randall Park.
Yeah, well, I was gonna say shout out to him. He was in the premiere episode of Young Rock last night, so I really enjoyed that.
There you go.
Always Be My Maybe. I mean, that was a phenomenal movie too. But yeah, I mean, all these guys. Give me more of all of them. Give me a spinoff, whatever. I'm sure we're going to be seeing more of Monica Rambeau anyway, whether it's in Captain Marvel 2 or whatever. But Darcy Lewis and Jimmy Woo. I mean, if they get a spinoff coming out of this, by all means, like, bring it on.
Yeah, Chris, seems like you got a hot take there. You were brewing on while we were.
No, I was trying to think about something.
You had that look. You had that look about you.
When I have seen Always Be My Maybe, and I forgot like that was actually Randall Park. Like I know of him. Like my favorite thing he's ever done. My favorite thing he's ever done is the cold open from The Office where he plays Jim.
Oh yeah. And
I think that is one of the funniest moments in TV ever. Like I think it's so, like he's so good at it. But then I think with both of those characters, with Jimmy Woo and Darcy Lewis, like both of them are like, I thought they were they're good as like comedic relief, but I thought they were kind of like annoying to some point in like Ant-Man and the Thor movies. Like I thought Kat Dennings, I did not like her. Like I was never a huge fan of her from like Thor. I've never watched Two Broke Girls.
Was it the Mew Mew scene?
It might have been, yeah. And it just I always like thought she was overdoing it for those movies, but I think the way that they kind of went back and used her for WandaVision, I'm actually like a huge fan of hers. Like she doesn't overdo it to the point where she kind of like simplifies it a little bit, where she's not annoying, but she makes like being like she's a doctor at this point now. I don't think she was in the Thor movies. I think she was working towards and I think now like I think without seeing her, we noticed that her character matured a lot. But at the same time, she's still comedic relief, but not like doesn't overdo it. So I love her in this role. So
it's good stuff. We actually skipped over a little bit, so I want to circle back to this. But one of you guys mentioned the FBI's person in witness protection.
Yes. So I think this is only ever mentioned by Jimmy Woo before Monica gets sucked into the hex. There's a lot of things that we kind of, and I think it's this episode or the next, where we start looking and they're piecing together who's actually in Westview.
It's this episode, yeah.
This episode.
Yeah, this one.
And I think that like why Wu was there was to investigate his missing person. And I think that person's going to play into the final 3 episodes. Now, who could it be? I've narrowed it down to there's one person that's been mentioned in almost every episode, but is never actually seen, who is Agnes's husband, Ralph.
Oh, yeah.
It could be Agnes herself. It's someone, I think it's someone, or it could be or Dottie. They were like my three. Or it's a completely different person we haven't even like kind of mentioned or seen before. That was mentioned or seen before.
So I don't think it's Agnes. And the reason I say that is because she does have a sword file on the board, but there's no ID. Now, in this episode, you don't see that there's no ID because it's out of frame. But in episode 5, they actually show her file on screen. Unfortunately, I didn't have the capability to zoom in and see exactly what it said, but she doesn't have like a driver's license or whatever on there.
Right.
But she does.
Yeah,
have
everybody else does have their driver's
Yeah.
license for a lot of the characters.
So
I imagine if she wasn't in the FBI witness protection program, they would probably have something like that, unless she used some other means to hide that detail. But but yeah, that's an interesting point, and I hadn't even thought about that. I just glossed it over, but there could absolutely be some significance with that person.
Yeah. So and going forward, I hope they answer it like soon, because now that Jimmy Woo's outside. Well, all right, never mind. I'm gonna stop. We're gonna get to that in a little bit. All right.
Okay.
All right.
And then Sword's astronaut program.
Yes. So this is going where I think the direction of the MCU is eventually going to go. They kind of mentioned how Hayward was talking about their astronaut program, where he said they lost half of them in the blip, and the other half went insane. We do know that after the Disney Investors Day, there were a lot of shows that were planned and a lot of movies that Marvel has kind of coming up. I think that's going to factor heavily into, that was the first mention of some sort of Fantastic Four introduction. So, or there's some kind of, I think that's going to play into either a Fantastic Four introduction or some kind of cosmic threat coming to, because even Monica points it out. She says there's always been threats out there. I think that was a little bit of a hint thrown towards the Fantastic Four, because they get their powers from space. Now, I know in the comics they didn't work for Sword, but MCU's always rewriting characters' histories as close as they can, as long as it makes sense in the story. So that's probably a huge leap, but of where I'm coming from. But that was my, after I rewatched it, that was my kind of takeaway from it. So.
Well, and actually, that kind of ties in with the CMBR, the cosmic radiation, because that's what gives the Fantastic Four their powers. And here we see this kind of combined with Wanda's magic in the hex itself. That's what Darcy Lewis determines the hex is made out of, is the CMBR, and then these additional wavelengths. So I could absolutely see them tying in the FF through Sword and the CMBR.
And I don't know when this was filmed, if this was planned out while the Fox. I'm sure they kind of redid it while the Fox deal was happening. Are they Fox or Sony? They were part of Fox.
Yeah, they were Fox.
Yeah, they were part of Fox. And so I would like to think this was part of their plan altogether. But I think that they might have kind of had like an A direction and a B direction before, like, if the deal didn't happen. But I think this was their first, like, kind of alluding to the fact that we are going to get Fantastic Four, but at least this is the first kind of mention indirectly.
Okay.
And then And then And then the other hexagon I noticed was, if you look at Hayward's awards in the back, that's also their set up as
when
a
he's talking to
hexagon.
Rambo in the office.
Yeah. Howard, what were you gonna say?
No, I was just gonna say, I mean, Hayward kind of talks to Rambo about like keeping her grounded, and she's like, drones usually follow me. So there's definitely obviously some extraterrestrial activity that she, or going into space that she was doing. And Darcy at some point, I forget what episode it is, but she says, big fan of yours. I think it's this episode. And it's like, what is she referring to with that? So obviously there's something with Rambeau's character that she's done, to help with things like that, which I'm sure will get alluded to in future Marvel projects. But I think you're definitely right about that.
Yeah. So that's pretty much it for the episode. The only other note that I had is, boy, I love me some Voodoo Child by Jimi Hendrix. I thought them using that song and the soundtrack, some of the songs that they've had in this show have been fantastic. But the ending to this episode where, she tosses Rambeau out the hex, and then Rambeau's like, oh yeah, it's her, it's all Wanda. And then we see WandaVision, the kids getting cozy and watching TV, and then boom, Voodoo Child. I'm like, dude, that's awesome. Like A+ to music selection right there.
I would 100% agree. I was watching that episode again, and then I just hit that riff, and I was like, yeah, let's go. So got me super excited for it as well.
All right, so on to the next episode, episode 5, on a very special episode.
Yeah,
what kind of vibes we picking up here?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, right?
Yeah.
Listen, Growing Pains, Family Ties, pick your 80s show. But yeah, definitely with the paint coloring of Vision there. Also, just hilarious, the young Vision, showing him grow up in those photos with with the flashback.
That is the weirdest. Like that
it's
actually
hilarious.
I think that the baby one terrified me more than anything else in the show. Like it's so. Like I can't. I saw that and I was like, "Whoa!" Like that is.
It's for the children.
The vibes that it gave me is in the live action Grinch movie when you see like young Grinch and he just looks, he's like a kid, but he's got this big Grinch head and it stands out. Like that baby Vision and kid Vision reminded me of that, but I love it. So give me more.
He looked like a Funko Pop.
Yeah, he did.
It's a fair shout.
So Wanda to the twins, why don't you do what I want? And then Agnes says, kids, you can't control them no matter how hard you try. Kind of interesting take here. The twins wouldn't fall asleep. Now, is that Wanda's magic acting up, or is there something else? Wanda can't control them.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Jesus, Harry, we keep doing this. You go.
Sorry, it's just listen.
Yeah, go ahead.
Take it, Hans.
Yeah, go ahead.
All right. I think there's a little more power at work here because that I don't know the fact that she can't control them because maybe it's her blood, like they're real, and Monica even says it too, where she says they're her children, like they're not a product of her imagination, like they're actually living. And I think this is where we start seeing that Agnes definitely knows a lot more of what's going on, and I have a theory that Agnes has a little more control, and necessarily like she may be able to control the children, or at least somehow. Like I'm still, the verdict's still out on that, but I think that for some reason either there's a higher power working towards against Wanda, or Wanda just doesn't. She says, "Why don't you want?" Maybe she just doesn't really honestly want them to be quiet, if that makes sense.
I gotcha. She kind of wants them to keep doing what they're doing so she has content for the episode, or whatever the reason, I guess.
Yeah.
Harry, what's your take?
Yeah, I mean, this is something that I would say I have more questions for than answers. Like, how did the kids, how are they growing like this? What's going on? But if it's like Chris is saying, I mean, this is also where Agnes, we kind of get a realization that she is being more involved in who Vision and, Wanda are, and seeing their powers and seeing who they truly are. So that's an interesting thing as well. But for me, this, I feel like, has more questions that we're going to hopefully get answered in the last 3 episodes. But I don't have any hot takes on that one, sadly.
Okay. Is this Monica's superhero origin? Her cells being changed by the radiation. They had that non-informative X-ray from the last episode. We think this is where she gets her powers.
Yeah, if you could say her cells are mutating, which
Ah,
I see what you did
clever.
there.
Chris, just walk off the podcast now.
Yep, I'll
Just,
see you
just head
guys
out.
later. Have a good night.
Howard, were you aware that she is a superhero in the comics?
No, I mean, obviously, no matter what you do on the internet, no matter who you follow, if somebody starts talking about this, even if they have slight comic book knowledge, they start to kind of hint or, be like, oh, well, in this, she was this. So I didn't. And it makes sense, just with Marvel's history, with Black Panther, with Captain Marvel, about how they introduced their story. Wouldn't be surprised if we're seeing those, kind of stepping stones to her becoming who she's going to be with that. And the fact that, it's hinted, like I mentioned earlier, that she's doing something in space, with either, being a pilot or something, that's taking her into the galaxy to, help keep, the villains away is probably something. But no, I did not have that information.
It's interesting because, most characters might have one or maybe two superhero names, but Carol Danvers and Monica Rambeau actually go through multiple iterations, and Monica Rambeau herself was Captain Marvel as well, following Carol Danvers. Then she was known as Photon, and I believe she's currently known as Spectrum. So it's pretty interesting, but I have a feeling we're definitely going to see her pop up with powers. If not in this show, definitely in Captain Marvel too. I would put money on it. So kind of a macabre question, but is Vision a meat puppet? We get we know that Wanda stole the body and it was disassembled, and she kind of reassembled it. She sees him at one point as his, I guess, true self, where he's dead and missing the Infinity Gem. Is she controlling this body and just having it float around and talk, or did she really make him alive, and she was just kind of having PTSD when she saw him dead? Howard, what do you think?
I think he has to have some of himself in there, and this is kind of a feeling that I get, like Wanda did a deal with the devil. You mentioned it earlier in an episode of, I think Wanda has somebody helping her or helped her and able to do this and, bring Vision back to give her kids, to give her the life that she always wanted. And I think the fact that Vision's asking so many questions, and even in the next episode when he goes exploring, I think, I don't think he's much of a puppet, and that his character is, again, learning and growing as the episodes move on to become self-aware, to become, hey, what is happening here? What's going on?
Hans, is Vision singing Papa Ultron's tune, "There Are No Strings on Me"?
I think he's dead. I think that when we see her break into in the lab and steal him, I think that's a matter of we start seeing her, and we've said this like a few times, her lose control. And this was after she shot Monica out, and I think she was maybe a little flustered and realized that when she turned around, she wasn't really focusing on the fact that, like, she made him look and act like brought, like, basically to her own tune, I guess is the way to put it. But I think that's why, like, quickly she turned away and realized, she's like, that's not what I want him to look like, and turned around. Now I can get on the same board of, like, someone else is pulling the strings on him, not her necessarily. Like, she made the deal with the devil. But I think that there's a little, I don't think she fully brought him back to life, because he was basically powered by the Infinity Stone, which is now, at this point, I don't even know where they're at in time, but they were
not on Vision's
timeline.
head.
Yeah, on that timeline, they were destroyed by Thanos. So, I'm on the board that she's somehow making it seem like he's real, or someone else is kind of controlling him, or brought him back.
Interesting. So the next question was another one that really messed me up, and I actually saw this on the internet, because there are some dark corners on the internet. But Sparky the dog, was he suicidal? Now, let me, because there is some context for this. Maybe we don't see many animals in the Hex. The only two that come to mind are the bees on the Beekeeper which were not original to the Hex. They transformed when the Sword Agent came through. And then Senor Scratchy, the rabbit, which immediately took off out of the hat and ran away. So is Wanda unable to control animals, or maybe she has some maddening effect on them? Because this dog wanted out, man. Hair.
Yeah, I mean, I think Agnes killed the dog. If I'm being honest, I think
Oh no!
something happened and Agnes got mad and she said, "That's it, Sparky." And then the kids came looking and she's like, "Oh no, sorry."
He wasn't hungry for her azalea leaf bushes.
No, I
or
don't.
whatever.
I think that was all a scam.
Okay.
I think she really did take care of little Sparky.
Yeah.
So how do you explain him licking an electric socket? Look, I've had dogs all my life. Not a single one of them has ever done that.
He was new. He'd never been in a home. They found him outside, and that's what I'm going with.
Yeah, but
Okay.
how would he have killed himself behind a bush?
Well, he ate the leaves and got sick.
Is that what
That's
they
what
said?
she's-
To get out of there.
Yeah, that's what she
all
said.
right,
Yeah.
okay. All right, I apologize.
Yeah.
I missed that line. I still think Agnes, like the way she like creepily came above that bush and was like, "Here, I found your dead dog." Like it was she did something. I don't know. She has that look on her where she's like didn't just find a dead dog. Like she looked like she killed him.
Well, either way, R.I.P. Sparky.
Well, I was gonna say too. Do we think the missile killed him?
At that
Didn't
point,
they take a shot?
at that point,
but I thought it took a shot at her and the twins, not.
I wonder if the
dog
dog
wasn't
was
there
just
yet.
collateral damage.
but at that point, did they fire the missile yet, or was that after? I think
The
the missile
dog,
was
I think,
after.
gets
Yeah, I
outside
think so, too.
because he's trying to get away to keep Greg's theory of being suicidal.
Yeah.
And then they wander outside, and then that's when the drone is there.
That's okay. All right.
Which leads to the next point about somebody had points of relating to mutants. Dun, dun, dun.
Yes. So I
There's-
thought Wanda turning the guns on Hayward was very reminiscent of her comic father, Magneto.
Yes, and if you look,
That's a good
I don't
shot.
I don't know what mess of a movie this was in, but in one of the newer X-Men movies with Fassbender, when she kind of turns her head and does that little like wave,
Mhm.
Fassbender does that. I think it's the Dark Phoenix. He does the same exact kind of motion where he lets go whatever control. He kind of like lets his arm off and turns his head.
Well, didn't he do it in
I don't
like
re-
when he holds up all the missiles when they're coming down on their ship, and
I
then
mean,
like
if
sends them back?
If I'm being honest, I feel like he does this every movie.
Yeah, that's fair.
But it
That's
just
fair.
but it was very like and I watched Greg, I'm like you, like on the internet, like I come across something and I saw a video where I'm like, all right, like like it was a very like quick 5-second video like of that shot side by side, and it's like, was it intentional or just kind of like an ode to Magneto, the fact that she is his daughter? It could be. I don't think it's anything more than that. I think it's a cool, like, kind of,
I think it's just an homage.
yeah. Especially coming with the entrance of who we'll talk about probably very shortly. The surprise character. I thought it was a cool. It may just be a thing to kind of mess with fans because the rabid superhero fans that are out there. But
Yeah.
I thought that was a cool kind of like twist. If you watch them side by side, it is pretty neat.
Yeah, agreed. I thought it was very ironic that Wanda was giving lessons on grief management to the twins.
I know.
I mean, we're talking about somebody who could potentially be orchestrating all of this because she can't deal with
Yeah.
grief and trauma. And she's like, nope, don't age yourselves up. You need to experience this.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
thanks, Mom.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it symbols like what parents, they tell you what to do, or the advice that like they tell you what to do, but they don't do. You know what I mean? So I think
Do as
it's-
I say, not as I do.
Yeah, I think it's exactly what a parent would say in that situation. So
Yeah.
that's it's kind of funny.
Season 2 is just gonna be the kids making up their own hex, and it's just gonna be a never-ending cycle.
Speaking of the hex, real quick, one point on the hex. I think it's funny that they named it that. Now it makes sense because it's hexagonal shape, but
Mhm.
also for those that are comic fans, Wanda's powers are referred to as hex magic in the comics. Like it's not just magic, it's hex magic specifically. So I think it's funny that they
Interesting.
threw that in and they call this the hex.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
All right. What about Vision?
So I thought it was actually this is the first indication that Vision, I don't know if he realized he could do it, or I think he kind of and I forget the guy's name. Carl. Is it Carl who
At the office?
Yeah,
Norm.
his friend at the,
Norm.
who was it? Norm.
Norm.
I'm sorry. I
Yeah.
don't even know if there was a Carl. Norm. So how he like I love that whole like how they're starting to like look at the days of the internet, like the early internet, and he's questioned how to send an email and if he needs a stamp. But then you see like Vision being able to basically take him out of whatever trance he was in, and immediately after Vision takes him out, it's not necessarily like a Norm oh, where am I? Like he's immediately like, you need to help me. Like she's got us under control. And then Vision starts digging a little bit more into the computer. So I think this is like I like how Vision is, they now kind of reveal that he can do this to people in Westview, which will come up in the next episode with he does it on Agnes, which we'll talk about when we get there. But I think it's really neat because, and then he actually starts believing the fact that like if Wanda's controlling this, like he needs to put Norm back into it, like right, like he can kind of alter the states of the characters in Westview, which I think is kind of neat. But you know, it leads up to the fact that the fight that him and Wanda have later in the house, which I know someone else wanted to bring that up.
Yeah, I thought that was pretty funny because Wanda was just like, conversation over, man. She tried putting the credits on Viz, and he wasn't having any of it. That seed has been planted, and we've kind of seen it grow over the course of the episodes where he is suspicious of something. He's not sure
Right.
what's going on, but he knows something's going on. And she was just trying to end that conversation by rolling credits.
Yeah, I didn't
Let's
put
get
two
out
and
of here.
two. I didn't put two and two together with the rolling of the credits like during the fight because I rewound it and I'm like, oh, that was Wanda doing that. Like that wasn't just like Disney trying to be like kind of clever and add like I after I watched it like really quick again, I'm like, oh, like she said like I'm not having this conversation, and I was like, oh, that's her. So I thought that was pretty
Pretty fun. All right, and then we had the big reveal, the surprise guest on the episode. Who wants to talk about that?
I mean, for me, it was interesting to see. As I guess you hear all the rumors about when Disney acquired Fox, all those good things, and now they did something different with Pietro. I love what like I feel like you can't say that name with a Pietro without like doing it in an accent to like make it sound actually cool. But it's not quite the reveal that we thought it was going to be, because I was convinced. I was like, oh, here comes my boy Aaron Taylor Johnson. He's here. Let's go. And no, they brought in the kid from X-Men.
So I had actually read, like, not spoilers. Well, I guess it was spoilers, but like way back when they were filming this, I read that Evan Peters was on set, and it's like, oh, well, they're going to bring in that Pietro. Awesome. But then you kind of put that in the back of the mind and you're on the hype train and all this stuff. So that kind of goes, but yeah, it was really cool to see that. Hands, what did you think?
Yeah, and I was like, that was the one like moment in the show, like up to this point where like I was like, oh, like this is insane. Like the fact that now we're looking at, like, we've always wanted to see like the X-Men or mutants in the MCU, and at that moment, the initial like shock value of seeing it, and you're like, oh, like it's really happening. Like now, what's next? And I think it was before this episode had aired. One of it was Elizabeth Olsen who said, or Paul Bettany, one of them said that there was pretty much like a Luke Skywalker like cameo that was coming.
Oh, yeah, that was Elizabeth. Yeah.
Yeah. And Paul Bettany had said that like it was something where like there was whoever this person, like there's someone who he always wanted to work with and blah blah blah. And I thought at that point, I'm like, I was really hyped up and I'm like, I hope this isn't it, but I was still at the same time, I'm like, this is this is looking good towards like the future of where the MCU wants to go. And if this is the first introduction of mutants, like this is the way to do it. And it's not like a huge, I don't want to say a huge, it's not a huge reveal, but it's just like, it's done so, like they did this on a TV show. It wasn't like a movie or something. And
Yeah.
even with Mandalorian, has done such an amazing job at keeping things under wraps. And I read that too, where he was in the past in like on set and he was rumored to be in it, but I didn't actually think it would happen. And then normally like this stuff comes out 3-4 weeks before, like with movies, people are leaking stuff on the internet like crazy. So I think the fact that it didn't get out, I was kind of impressed.
I'm gonna take a hot take here and say that this is not the reveal that she was talking about. I think
don't
there's
think
gonna
it is
be
either.
No, and
another
I'm on the,
character.
I after I was like, they're not gonna waste a Luke, like he's not a Luke Skywalker like
level
on
character,
that
right?
level at all.
Yeah.
And he just stood at the front door. Like it wasn't like a big thing.
So there was another note here about Pietro. I was wondering if you could expand upon.
So, and on that note, as hyped as I am for mutants, I'm very certain that he is not the Fox Quicksilver.
Okay.
I think that, and we'll see as we jump into episode 6, there's a little more at play. He never mentions, like, I feel like if he was the way his character is in the X-Men universe, I feel like he's not playing the same character. I feel like he's playing like kind of like a more mischievous kind of role.
Mm-hmm.
And he's another one who knows of a lot more than Wanda might not even know about what's happening, because he's asking a lot of questions. He's like he kind of digs into the point where he's like saying like why don't you have an accent? Like he's asking questions and he's like making Wanda seem like she's controlling it, but at the same time I think he's working for someone a little higher that is, I don't know, pulling the strings.
Okay. Yeah, so we'll get into that stuff with the next episode. But you're right, Pietro, or Peter, as I think he was in the X-Men universe, definitely acting a little sus.
I think Disney did that and said, watch the internet reaction to this, and then like they're gonna make it seem like that the X-Men are coming, and they're just I'm fully confident they said that like we're gonna just completely mess with a whole fan base in 4 seconds.
All right, so that's the end of episode 5, and that leads us to the current episode 6, all new Halloween Spooktacular. What kind of sitcom vibes we getting from this one, Harry?
I could just picture it like an all new Halloween Spooktacular, like just the advertisement.
You could see the
from
commercial,
the 90s.
yeah.
I could just see it, and like but definitely Malcolm in the Middle heavy vibes on this one.
Oh, for sure.
Especially with the kids, like panning to them and having them talk with it. Really excited to see for the last 3 episodes, when we get into the 2000s and, the 2010s, and seeing what they do with that, or, up to date. But yeah, heavy Malcolm in the Middle vibes. Really enjoyable, really brings you back. I mean, especially, what I would say for, people our age, in your early 30s. With watching that show, or having it on, or having a family member who would put that show on Sunday night on Fox. So, man,
that was a good show.
Yeah, I enjoyed it.
So we fast forward a little bit and we get to the Halloween, I guess
bash or party
bash or whatever you want to call it.
Whatever,
it was something in the town. What did Agnes call it? The town something. Town Square Scare. That's what it was.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
So Pietro and Wanda are talking, and Pietro is seemingly aware of what is going on with the situation. Chris, you alluded to this earlier. What are your thoughts on it?
Yeah, and I think he had said, and going back to the whole like why he thinks that he seemingly knows a little more. You look at like the trick or treat scene, like when he says, excuse me, when they went to the one house and they got the fish, and he said something like blah blah blah. Remember, we got this whatever. And she like looked at him like, I don't remember it that way. And then as we go into the episode, Pietro keeps saying these little things. He's like, "Well, what do you remember? Like, what do you like? You basically summoned me to come here, like."
Mm-hmm.
And Wanda didn't really made it seem like she didn't really know why he was there to begin with. Like he said the last he's like, I got shot for no reason, which, I mean, you did get shot for a reason because you were trying to stop Ultron. Like,
I know.
like I think that he, like, she wasn't there to see him die, so she can't really remember the experience. So I think that he's kind of made it seem like, he's rewriting the Quicksilver that we know in the MCU to make it like more like make Wanda make it seem like he died for nothing, almost.
Mm-hmm. Howard, what's your take on this?
Yeah, I mean, I think he's seemingly aware of the situation because I think at the end of episode 5, like when Pietro shows up, when they cut to the scenes with Darcy, you can hear the horn or the alarm going off that was very similar to when Wanda came out and when Rambeau came out. So I wonder if something went in at that time and that's why the alarm went off, or it could just be, a coincidence there. But I think there's something, and, it would kind of explain how his character changed when he went into the Hex. So I think that's partially why he's aware, is because I think he went in there. But then again, it doesn't answer the question of like, well, what, in what form is he? Is he like Vision, where he's dead and he's in there and now he's a new character or something similar to that? So that's an interesting point there, to me at least.
I think Pietro is not Pietro, and I'm going to leave it at that until we get to later on. Interesting note here. First time we see other kids, and talking about Pietro kind of being aware of the situation. He mentions that he's like, "Oh, what'd you do with the kids? You just have them sleeping until holiday episode?" Blah blah blah.
Yeah.
And then we had a nice little nod to Aaron Taylor Johnson.
Yeah, I thought it was just funny. I mean, it could just be coincidence, but I feel like nothing on this show or what they do
Gotta be intentional.
It's like, I think Pietro says it and then Wanda says it and they're like, kick ass. And it's like, yeah, like that's where your brother from. He was in Kick Ass as well. So
Yes.
That's what I at least said to my wife while we were watching, and she just went, huh?
I
said,
yeah,
never
same.
mind.
I did the same thing. I like laughed. I was like, "Ha, that's pretty cool. They did that." And Catherine's like, "What?" And I explained it. She's like, "Uh huh."
That was the moment, huh?
No, that wasn't. No, I
wasn't
skipped talking about. No, that was just more along the lines. I was like, "Uh huh, that's clever." So I tried to explain it. She's like, "Oh, all right."
So also I have this is the second time, but I believe it's actually the third time that Wanda claims not to know how she did this. Like Pietro was grilling her in the town square, and he was like, "How did you even do this? Like, I'm not your, I'm not your husband. I'm your brother. Like, you can tell me." And she's like, "I don't know." So that's kind of interesting. Are we buying that?
No. Well,
No,
the fact that she doesn't know, I feel like she knows. I feel like she knows. I guess I don't want to say like she knows the consequence of whatever's happening, but she doesn't know exactly how. Like I believe that she doesn't know how it all started.
She just knows that she's here and she's doing it.
She knows that she can control it.
Yeah. Or what do you think?
I think there's some accuracy to her claims. I think she doesn't know exactly how this, and I think this will get revealed in an episode, because I feel as though at some point we didn't get to see the full capacity of how Wanda stole Vision, how Wanda put Vision back together. And there's points there for me where I think there's stuff that either she is choosing not to remember or decided not to remember, but I think it's gonna come up in the next couple episodes.
Mm-hmm. I think she's being genuine that she doesn't know how she did this, but it's interesting because I mean she clearly went and stole Vision's body, and that took place immediately before this. So she had to have done that on her own. but then not knowing how she got into this situation, it's like, oh yeah, I went and stole a body, and then all of a sudden I'm here. I don't know. Like it seems kind of
Well, I
strange.
mean, Ultron did used to have control of them without them kind of fully realizing what exactly they were doing. So could be
Yeah,
some
that's
Ultron
true.
hits there, or could be Loki's got his scepter back and he's controlling them like Hawkeye and uh, the scientist in Avengers. I'm just throwing out crazy theories now, but could be. We don't know.
Could be. And then we also get Pietro referencing Vision's second death because
Mm,
he's aware that Vision did die the first time, and he's like, oh well, it's not like your dead husband can die again. So that's kind of
really
interesting.
struck a chord there.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, the way to be
No
empathetic.
filter.
Yeah, but I did. Speaking of Vision's second death, I there were two notes I had on it. One, I thought it was well, almost death, I should say. I thought it was really cool effects wise how they did it, and they were stripping him away, and you could see the wires and all of that stuff underneath, which was kind of what we saw in Infinity War when Shuri was piecing him back together,
Yeah.
or trying to remove the Infinity Stone, I should say. And then the other thing too, which was interesting, is when he is laying down as he's, I guess, passed out from the pain or whatever, it's in the exact same pose that Pietro was in after he had been gunned down in Avengers Age of Ultron. So I don't know if that was just an homage or if there's any type of significance to it, but I thought that was a pretty cool tie in there. Do you guys have any thoughts on that scene?
Poor Paul
Jens, how about
Bettany.
you?
Like his character has died 3 times in the MCU. Like once as Jarvis, then they kill him twice as Vision. Like this poor guy. Like
Almost twice. He didn't quite die.
Okay.
He's getting those checks. I'm sure he's fine.
Yeah.
That's probably why he realized they killed Jarvis off. He's probably like, I'm all right. I'm
Yes,
done.
those checks aren't coming.
Yeah.
No.
He gets those residuals probably.
I thought it was really cool. Now this is where I don't think Vision is fully alive because I don't think he can't live outside of the hex. So I think that was basically when he was getting sucked back in. Like that was basically his only form of living. So and the soldiers didn't really care because they were. I think it's revealed here that Hayward was after Vision's body for weapons purposes. So, but I didn't even catch that. Like his like position was similar to Quicksilver's, which is cool. But I think that it actually like we got a little more to Vision. Like I loved him in this whole episode of how he was like trying to figure it out, and the fact that he knew that like something wasn't right leaving Westview, and I think that the fact that he didn't he thought in his mind he was still alive enough he didn't even think that leaving would kill him, which I think was pretty cool. But yeah, the whole scene was done really well. Like how he was screaming, "The people need help," and basically the soldiers or Sword basically seemed like they didn't really care.
Yeah.
Which was cool.
Yeah, that scene again where he's screaming, "The people need help." Like at first you think he's just saying help, and you think he's talking about himself, but no, he's talking about the people. Yeah. The people need help.
Right.
So yeah, that was pretty cool. All right, and then we have the hex expanding. Any thoughts on that? How far is this going to go? Did it stop? I mean, it seemed to look like it stopped, right?
Yeah, I think the last shot they made it seem like I think it was Hayward driving. They made it seem like it kind of positioned and they were gaining some ground on it. My personal opinion, the fact that they showed that happening is going to just basically open up floodgates in the event that we're either going to get like a much bigger expansion or like the fact that something's going to happen to the point where that hex is probably going to go a lot farther than anyone really wants it to go.
Yeah. I mean, it starts out as a tiny local problem, and this could quickly expand into something even larger.
I think it means the next episode we're watching an episode that takes place at a circus. So
Yeah.
with all their vehicles like changed.
so
I thought
weird.
that was cool.
Yeah.
Just to see kind of what happens with that. But I wouldn't be surprised if the next episode, for the 2000s takes place at a circus or something like
Yeah.
that.
I thought that was cool. Yeah.
All right, and then who posed this last question here?
I did, but the one thing I do want to bring up, you know what? I'll save that for another point I'm going to make a little later.
Okay.
Who is Monica's engineer contact?
That's the question on everybody's mind right now, right?
It's very.
Is it? I didn't really think about it.
It's been brought up multiple times that she has an engineer what kind of engineering?
An aerospace engineer.
Aerospace.
Yeah.
An aerospace engineer friend who by name has not been revealed yet. It's very interesting as how, like, have we seen this person yet in the MCU, which I don't think we've met anyone who's an aerospace engineer.
Mm-hmm.
Are they going to make a big reveal, or is it just going to be like some guy named
Steve.
like Steve?
All right.
Yeah.
Well, the suspense is killing us, Hans. For Harry's sake, tell us who you think.
My theory is based on a long, many years of speculation of who's entering the MCU, which is, as I brought up earlier,
Jesus Christ.
we are going to see next week or the week after John Krasinski enter the MCU as Mr. Fantastic. Reed Richards himself.
Wait, there's going to be two Jim Halperts on this show?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
My theory, and I know he met with Marvel on multiple projects. And,
I didn't know that.
Well, sorry, he did. This was like
he was the runner up for Captain America.
Yes, before they picked Evans. I think I could be completely wrong, but I think that the way they mentioned what my point earlier, how they mentioned the space program, we're either going to get John Krasinski or someone who we don't know who's going to be cast as Dr. Doom.
Okay. Well then, so because I don't think you mentioned it, for Harry's sake, who would John Krasinski be playing?
He would be playing Mr. Fantastic.
Mr. Fantastic,
Reed Richards.
okay.
Yeah.
Reed Richards.
So
Hi, my name's Reed Richards.
and the way that I think
Pal.
the next episode, I think, or one of the next two, is going to be formatted in that like Office Modern Family style documentary.
Mm-hmm.
What better way to introduce John Krasinski than the format that made his career?
Oh, see, I didn't even think about that. That would kind of be too perfect.
Yeah,
that would be pretty cool.
Harry, what are your thoughts? You think this could possibly be John Krasinski's entry point?
Listen, I'm a guy who enjoys watching the first trailer and then not knowing exactly what's going to happen in the movie. I like reading as little as possible. So if that does happen, that's really cool.
Sorry.
But I'm going to hope. No, it's fine. I don't care. I mean, what are we going to do? Not talk about it? I mean, the people want to hear it. So I will be more thrilled if it's different. But that is pretty cool or exciting if that is the case with that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Personally,
don't have much thoughts.
It is true that Reed Richards is an aerospace engineer. I don't think it's going to be Reed Richards. As much as everybody wants it, I think Marvel knows that, and I think that they're doing this to swerve us.
Something else at play.
Yeah. Now, interestingly, I was actually reading an article earlier today, and these guys, I think it was IndieWire, I'm not sure, but whoever it was said they think it's actually going to be a character named the Blue Marvel. She's a she's a romantic interest for Monica or he's a romantic interest for Monica Rambeau, and obviously a superhero with powers and stuff. He's not an aerospace engineer in the comics, but that's something that they could easily retcon. I'm not saying it is going to be the Blue Marvel. I'm just saying I don't think it's going to be Reed Richards, as much as I would love that. And as much as I would love to see John Krasinski playing him. If they go the Victor Von Doom route, which I didn't even think about, Hans, you silly, silly man, that would be amazing too. But it doesn't seem like he would be somebody that Monica Rambeau would be working with or working for.
I think that I hope I'm right. If I'm not, like, if Krasinski doesn't come into the MCU like this with WandaVision, I'm
Mhm.
not going to be upset. Like I enjoy being surprised, but I think you're right. Disney has a way of teasing people, like
Yeah.
with a lot, like, and this might be their way of saying, like, you know what? Guess what? Here it comes, and then Steve comes in and it's just a regular guy.
But that said, I mean, all bets are off after Luke Skywalker
It's
because
it's
nobody
gonna
thought
Yeah.
that was happening, and boom.
it's gonna be
So.
Yeah.
Jorge Garcia from Lost. He's gonna be like,
So that's it as
What a
far as
reference.
episode 6 goes. We've lined them all up and knocked them all down. Uh, so let's talk about what's next. What do we think is next?
Um,
More into how Wanda stole Vision.
Yeah, like I keep going back to this. I feel like we're gonna get some more because it just has that security cam footage where she like busts down the doors. Doesn't feel very much like Wanda to
Mm.
me. That's why I think there's something else at play. There's another character at play who helped her steal Vision, and the footage cuts out. And whenever they don't show you something, that means that something happened. So I think we'll get some flashback into when Wanda understands better how this came to be. We referenced it earlier. I think for me, another question is like, who is Ralph? Where is Ralph? How come we never see Ralph? Is Ralph like this creation from Agnes for this? Agnes's husband. We've obviously already established that Agnes is a weird character. So I'm sure that'll probably come up as something. And then I guess another question I have, sorry, I'm throwing all these questions at you guys, is
It's all
how
good.
did their kids come around? Like, I know she birthed the kids, but if obviously we like to keep it pretty PG here. How does this all work? How did these kids come to be? And that's where I mentioned earlier, I think she made a deal with the devil to hey, I want the husband, I want Vision, I want the kids, I want the white picket fence. All right, well, if you want this world, this is what has to happen. So
Mm.
yeah, I think those are some things that will be interesting to see.
Okay. And then what do we think about the commercials? So the first one was the Stark Industries toaster, and there was a blinking red dot on the toaster. Now, this one I did actually see like an Easter egg video for, and they said that this represented Vision because if you
Hmm.
look at the toaster, it looks like it has two eyes and a mouth, and then there's the blinking light as the Infinity Stone.
Hmm.
So it looks like a robot face,
Yeah,
basically.
it is. I think it's the only color we see in that episode as well, because that's the first episode with it.
Right.
Um, and then in episode 2, we have that clicking noise kind of again for the Hydra Watch, which
Mhm.
you have Stark Industries, Hydra Watch. My big
Well,
question with, sorry, go ahead.
so the watch was a Strucker watch, and Strucker
Whatever
is the
that
guy that
means.
gave. Well, Strucker is the guy that gave Wanda and Pietro their powers with the Mind Stone.
That makes sense. Forgot
Yeah.
about that. Um, but for me, like, I wonder, like, who are these commercials for? Like, obviously they're showing to us and they're showing them to the FBI and the people who are covering it, but it's like, is there any hidden meaning behind like them just being like, oh, like, yeah, this is the person who gave them their powers, stuff like that? Like, I'm interested in the commercials, like if there's something more there, if it's bigger.
so go ahead, Greg. I look at your.
Oh no, I was just gonna say, are you asking if those commercials are for us, the viewer, or for the people watching WandaVision in?
I guess I just mean like, what's the point of them? Do you know what I mean? Like, I
Okay.
know all shows have commercials and stuff like that. And the next one's another Hydra. It's like Hydra Soak or something for the third episode commercial. And then the fifth episode, there's the Lagos paper towels. When you make a mess, you don't mean to. And it's like, that's the reference to Civil War when Wanda destroys kind of the building as they're chasing around. Who was the villain they were chasing around? Well, the guy with the
Crossbones.
crossbones. Thank you. So I just like, what are these commercials hinting at? What are they getting at? Are they just referencing? Is it something like, I don't even know what to call it, but it seems a bit odd to me.
Hans, what do you think?
So, and one thing I noticed, and I think it clicked with the Civil War reference. I think they're kind of going through Wanda's memories or her like kind of
Hmm.
trauma, because if I remember correctly, in Age of Ultron, which we've referenced more than I think I've ever referenced in my life in this show, um, when Wanda's telling the story about her backstory about being under rubble and a missile comes, does she say that the missile came and it was blinking and she was just waiting for it to go off?
I don't
and
remember if she
never
said it was
actually did.
blinking,
But
but
she said that there was
I
like something was happening, and she was just waiting for it to go off.
yeah, her and Pietro were there for days waiting for it to explode. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if they said it was like a red light or something. So, and I think like with
And
the
it was a
Strucker,
Stark missile, I believe.
yeah,
If
it
I'm
was a
not
Yes.
Stark
mistaken.
missile,
Yeah.
and then like Strucker, the one who caused her to have powers, and then the Civil War, the Hydra soak. I wasn't too. I didn't. I don't think I might have missed that one, but then the paper towels Lagos is where she blew up the building and everything. So I think it's
Yeah.
her trauma.
Mhm.
But that's kind of where I would think.
So, and I'm glad you say that because the very last episode, or yeah, the last episode, episode 6, had one for Yo Magic, a yogurt, and at the end of the episode, they say it's the snack for survivors. The shark
Yeah.
says that, and what I take away from that is Wanda is using her magic to survive her trauma and grief. Whether it's intentional or unintentional, whatever. Um, Yo Magic,
Yeah.
your magic.
Yeah.
That's what I take away from that. There wasn't too
Interesting.
much hidden meaning for that for me.
Yeah. I mean, when you put them all together like that, and I think the way we did, I mean, I think it just makes more sense to reference certain things. I don't know. I guess I just thought it would hopefully be a bigger picture thing, like, but probably not.
Well, to be honest, yeah, I mean, I hadn't given it much thought, but it's like you said, yeah, lining them all up like this and talking about it. I think
Yeah.
Hans is right on the money where this is coming from Wanda,
Yeah.
to the viewers. Longer episodes. What do we think?
I did read that, and has not been confirmed. I think that they said that people did like nerds on the internet did math because they said like
You mean us?
it was supposed to be like 6 hours or something. So then they like went through what we already have, and they're like, because I guess whoever created it might have been Feige, said it's gonna be like 6 hour show. So someone's like, oh well, blah blah blah. This many hours went by, and 3 episodes left. So I think they made it seem like there were going to be like maybe like 40-45 minute episodes, which would be cool for the final 3. I think that since no one really actually confirmed it, I'm not going to buy it. I think the last episode is going to be closer to an hour,
Mhm.
but that might be the only extended episode we get.
They're not all 20 minutes either. Like there have been some that are 35, 45 minutes. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
can see that happening.
I hope they dive in a little bit deeper, especially, I mean, when we get to these final 3, like if there's more, questions and answers, because, I mean, who knows if we'll get a second season or, a second iteration of what this could be. So that'd be pretty cool.
All right, so we're almost finished everything. What we're going to do now is we're each going to give our hottest take for the remainder of the season.
Spicy.
Yeah, let's get spicy. So, Har, what do you got, buddy?
Yeah, listen, I mean, as I've mentioned, as a non-comic book reader, I think, I mean, just with the introduction of the new Pietro, I think someone else is helping Wanda. I've been pretty sure of that since, even though they tried to convince us that it's all Wanda, somebody else is helping her. I think it's another X-Men character. We referenced it earlier. Magneto is her father in the comics, which would be a pretty big kind of Luke-esque appearance for me if we do get some, Michael Fassbender, because I love Michael Fassbender and he's the best part of the new X-Men movies. So that would be something for me. I hope it's that character. I mean, we'll see, but I think it probably could be something in that realm because, she is a mutant, blah, blah, blah. We can now use that word with Disney and all that good stuff.
Okay, good stuff. That is pretty spicy. Hans, how about yourself?
I'm going to go with I had 2, and I'm like kind of going back and forth because I just thought of one that as we were talking in the episode. So I'm kind of going to go a little bit with Harry's in terms of we're going to get that like kind of big reveal is going to be an X-Men. I like that, but I the more I lean towards it, I'm going to go with Agatha or Agnes
Mm-hmm.
is actually pulling the strings in the Hex as Agatha Harkness, who is in the comics a witch who, and if I remember correctly, helps train Wanda to some point, but eventually becomes like she's ultimately like a villain in the comics. So I think she's somehow. I think we got a lot of hints towards it, especially in the Malcolm in the Middle episode, the Halloween episode. In the opening credits, you see she's wearing pants on her butt that say naughty. I think that's one, if you didn't catch that. When she's in the car, I think that we're looking at like when Vision talks to her, she's not. Everyone else in the town is under like a spell where they're not talking, they're just like not moving, but she somehow is like interacting with Vision before he like snaps her out of whatever like
Mhm.
trance she might have been in. So I think she is basically I think, and everyone's alluded to this, that Agatha Harkness, I think she's going to be revealed and basically be like a big player going into the end of the season.
Nice. That is spicy as well. So my hot take, I originally had something totally different. I originally had that Wanda is doing this all on her own, and then I changed
Ooh.
it. But I will say, if they went that route, which I don't think they will, I think evidence is mounting contrary to that. But if they went that route, I would be 100% all in, all for it, because I think that breaks the, oh, she's a superhero mold. I mean, there's been some history leading up to this where she makes big mistakes. And to see her go through that, and this is the way that she's processing and dealing with her grief and trauma, and she's ultimately someone that needs to be put in check. I think that would be a really cool move. But that's not the that's not my hot take. I don't think that's going to happen upon re-examining everything. My hot take is that Mephisto manipulated or is manipulating Wanda. Now, Hare, do you know anything about Mephisto? No. Okay. Let me drop some knowledge on you, my friend.
Please
Mephisto
do. Please do.
is Mephisto is basically Marvel's version of the devil, or he's a devil. There's also a character called the One Below All, which might actually be Satan. But Mephisto is an extra dimensional character who rules over a hell dimension. He is nigh omnipotent, especially when he's in his dimension, although his powers diminish a little bit when he goes into our dimension or other dimensions. This guy is a Thanos level threat. And I think, considering that he is considered a devil, if not the devil, and all of the things that we've seen and heard leading up to this, he is manipulating Wanda. Also interesting, in the comics, he part of his essence is used to make the children, unknowingly on his part, but he eventually reabsorbs them, and that's what drives Wanda insane. Agatha Harkness actually has to help her deal with the trauma and the grief and all that stuff. So there's some history and some precedent in the comics for this. I didn't think originally that they would bring in Mephisto, but man, Feige's just crazy enough to do it. I think, if anybody was going to take that chance and know that fans would love it and bring in that level of a threat, I think this is the place for it, and I think it could absolutely be the time for it. So I don't know. That's my take. What do you guys think about Mephisto?
I am on board with that. 100%. I think that we're getting Evan Peters as Mephisto, as I was kind of alluding to earlier,
Yes.
where he's not. I think that we're kind of throwing us through a loop. Now, I think the way that we're not going to get a WandaVision season 2. I'm almost 100% confident.
Mm-hmm.
But the other reason I think Mephisto is they're introducing him as kind of the next big bad for going forward in the MCU is Doctor Strange 2 in the Multiverse of Madness and Spider-Man 3, whatever it's called.
Yeah.
And Greg I apologize, Harry, you're going to be a little silent here. In the comics, leading up to the House of M, is that what Mephisto kind of leads into the House of M series? Or is it the other way? Because I'm reading it now, so I wasn't.
No,
Yeah.
Mephisto doesn't have much to do with House of M, other than he reabsorbs the kids back in the 80s.
Gotcha. Okay. All right.
In real time. But Agatha Harkness helps Wanda suppress that memory, as well as the rest of the Avengers.
Okay.
When Wanda finds out about it in the present day, she goes nuts, and that leads to House of M.
Which is where I think we're not getting a WandaVision season 2. I think the next season is going to be, we're going to get like some kind of post-credit scene, or however leading up to it, and you're going to see like kind of like it's a Scarlet Witch or something, because they don't call her Scarlet Witch, but they actually reference it earlier in the series where they say she doesn't go by any code names or anything. Like, so I think, I think they're going to say like Scarlet Witch will return in House of M. So the season 2 of WandaVision will lead into House of M.
Ah, okay. And Hare, just to drop a little more comic knowledge on you, pal.
Nerd talk.
House of M is a crossover event that occurred in the comics where Wanda basically, her powers are out of control, and she creates an alternate reality that only Wolverine initially remembers the original reality. But in the new reality, Magneto is in control over mutants. Mutants overpopulate and outnumber humans.
Yeah.
So like basically it's an ideal world for mutants. This was created at Pietro's behest because Magneto was willing to kill Scarlet Witch because her powers were out of control in the real reality. Wolverine gets a group of people together and they decide to go for an all-out attack. Wanda eventually remembers that, hey, I'm manipulating all of this, and she utters 3 magic words which forever change the landscape of the Marvel Universe. No more mutants. And that decimates the population of mutants in the world from millions to 198, with no more mutants being born either.
Yeah.
So it's a very interesting thing. And if WandaVision does lead to a House of M series, mind blown. I'm getting goosebumps right now, boys.
And I'm going to bounce. Harry, go ahead. I want to bounce off your like. Go ahead.
Yeah, the only thing I was going to say is shout out to our friend Tim. He was over. You know,
he just got way excited,
and he was telling me about it. So, but yeah, this has been inspiring talk about comics. I appreciate it. I'm gonna go take a nap. You guys just wait till when you guys are done.
Harry, and I think when you said that you're gonna get we're gonna get that Luke Skywalker moment with Magneto.
Yeah.
I hope that happens only because I want it to lead to a House of M series. But I mean, I might not directly lead to that, but I think that would be kind of cool of how they do it. And my last note of today is if that happens, I'm fully supporting recasting him for Michael Shannon.
Oh, wow. I could see that.
I like Michael Shannon, so that's but I love Fassbender, so I'm not gonna.
Yeah.
Hot take. I like
that is my hot take.
Good stuff. Go ahead.
No, I got nothing.
Okay. Well, that is the end of our supersized episode of WandaVision, episodes 1 through 6. Thank you guys so much for hanging in there with us, discussing everything from our thoughts and perspectives and observations, all that good stuff, and of course our hot takes. So like, follow, share, subscribe, comment, all of that good stuff. You can find us on YouTube, Spotify, iTunes. Harry, anything left for the peeps? Yeah.
Listen, I mean, this won't be the last time we're gonna discuss WandaVision. So be on the lookout for a future episode.
Nice. And Hans, anything for the peeps out there?
Not much. Looking forward to more WandaVision talk. So we'll talk about it in a couple weeks. Follow me on the Twitter at PhilaTTP. Trust the process.
Is there an underscore on there? Is there an underscore?
There is not.
All right. Good. Got to get those underscores in.
You heard the man. Give him a follow. Show him some love. Beyond that,
get me to 100 followers, please.
Let's make it happen, guys. Beyond that, everybody have a great week. Enjoy WandaVision. We'll see you back in 2 weeks. And until then, live spicy.
Spicy.